G'day and welcome to the TheJadeRat. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. And this time we're back again with week 2 for Inktober. So that's days 8 to 14? 15. 14, I think. And on this episode of Joe I Can't Count, we're going to start off with Watch, which is Aragorn watching over the hobbits as they go towards Rivendell. He's keeping watch over the night, and I like the idea of Aragorn being really scruffy, because in the books he's typically described as having like shaggy hair, a little bit like deranged, kind of paranoid, and it's really quite funny. And you know, his sort of kingly properties aren't obvious when you meet him. He does look like a scrub, essentially. And I think it's so funny, so I did attempt to draw him as a little bit of like giving off kind of like hobo vibes, but I also had a hard time figuring out the pose for like how he would sit and how the sword and how his like legs and arms would be positioned as he's like sitting upon the rock. Did set in the 3 and a bit-ish one is behind the fire, sort of like 3-foot blobs for the hobbits. And yeah, I did want to do sort of like a sunset-y or close to nighttime vibe for it, because he's got fire to deter the Black Riders, the 9 who are coming after them, especially near Weathertop. So there we have it. Number 8, which is Watch, Aragorn watching over the hobbits as they sleep. Now, day 9. This one I had great fun coming up with the idea. I brainstormed a lot of these ideas in advance with my brother, who knows a lot more about the Tolkien Legendarium than I do. And for day 9 we had Pressure, which is something that I was gonna take like sort of more metaphysically or like emotional pressure, but my brother's like, no, do Fingolfin going up against Morgoth, and particularly Grond pushing up against his shield that eventually would get shattered, and then he's going to resist 3 times before finally, you know, his will get broken down and he will lose the battle, and unfortunately meets his end against Morgoth, which is kind of crazy because like you're going up against essentially Satan in like a 1v1 match. Yeah, that's mad. But I did also use blue ink, as you can see here, to accent the Noldor colours. So typically the Noldor have like blue and silver accenting and colours, so that's what I aimed to go for Fingolfin. I also had a really fun time drawing the I guess the studs on Grond. You can see there's like, it's a box with the corners drawn in, and they've got like the 4 shades, and I had a really fun time painting those in. And also this pose, I had interesting time drawing it, but harder of a time to ink it in to get that sort of shiny metallic look to it. What else? So his broken shield, as you can see, that's shattering, and I decided to put in, and you'll notice that I like to put in those little sparkles where something is shining and glinting, but especially his sword, which I believe it's called Ringil. It's apparently sort of glitters like ice, and how the light reflects off it, but it does get broken, and yeah, I don't think they recover it because his body gets taken off by eagles, because it was about to get like torn apart by Morgoth. Again, going up against Satan is probably the best idea, but also the Noldor aren't really known for their great ideas, so I mean, par for the course. So adding in some texture there, the scratches, the dents, to show that he's in the midst of the battle and he's not doing very well. So there we have it. Day 9, Pressure. Fingolfin versus Grond. Next we've got Pick, I believe, is the prompt, and it is Gwahir and his mates picking up Frodo and Sam after the Orodruin like explodes. I don't know what's going on over there, like volcanic eruption. I don't know what's going on with Frodo's arm. It's like hanging like at an odd angle. I'm gonna blame it on Gollum. But yeah, I like the idea of this, but I hated the way that the eagles turned out. I don't know, it feels like weird. It's like he's hunched over in like an awkward angle, and yeah, like his neck is too short or something. Not having a great time with that, but yeah, as always, and I think all of the Inktober drawings that I've done so far use sort of this technique where I use a dip pen to do the line art, and you can see that in that black pot on the top right there is ink in that pot, and I use the dip pen to sort of establish the outer lines, any of the details, get in some of the textures that sort of are harsher, something that requires better contrast, and then I go in with a brush, either the Holcroft size 6 round brush or the Holcroft size 20 round brush, which is the one you can see there, the big one. I normally use the smaller grey one. My creaky chair. But yeah, that's what I use. Next we've got Sour. And I actually had a fun time doing the sketch for this one, because it was more like facial expressions, so it was a bit easier to do as opposed to like a pose. But Yeah, this is Lobelia Sackville Baggins, our favourite distant relative that's really jealous of what we do and is always really nosy and may also steal your stuff. I like the animosity between Bilbo and Frodo, and then the Sackville Baggins is like it gives us the kind of like sitcom vibes to something that is like a grand and epic fantasy. It's, you know, in this world where there's wizards and dragons and like, you know, divine beings and stuff. We've also got like the annoying relatives that just come and like criticize you for everything. Here she is looking sourly at a spoon that she will no doubt put into her handbag at some point, with an awful expression. And then again, just putting in the shadows of the face to make it a bit more three-dimensional with the brush. But I smudged her eye, like, so sad. Her right eye got smudged, but it's okay, it'll do. It kind of adds a bit of flavour, I guess. Next, I liked the idea for this one, but I hated the execution, and I was getting kind of tired of like drawing all the dwarves. But this is stuck. So this is when Bilbo and Thorin and company get stuck in the secret passageway in the Lonely Mountain, because from the outside, Smaug smashes the I say Smaug, maybe I should say Smaug. I guess that's probably the better pronunciation for it. But yeah, he smashes the doorway, the secret entrance, while they're inside, and then they get trapped in, and the only way out is through the main hall, which they don't want to go through because Smaug is there. But yeah, I had to draw out all the dwarves, and I kind of got bored and didn't really care for all of the dwarves, but I did like Bilbo's pose there, standing on the rubble. Next we've got Roof, which is the Golden Hall of Meduseld in Edoras. I did try to keep this sort of similar to how they designed it in the movies, but I also didn't want it to be exactly the same. So I curved the roof up a bit and had it in that sort of thatched pattern, similar to how a mead hall, a Viking mead hall is sort of set out, because the roof is kind of like shaped like an upside down boat, like the hull of the boat sort of makes that curved roof shape, but also the different tiers of like the stairs and the archways and things like that. Those are pretty similar to the movies and how the designs were for those. Yeah, recently there's been a lot of like horses. I don't know why. Maybe because horseback is quite common in Lord of the Rings, but and also in the Legendarium in general. But yeah, this one, like, I don't know how to draw horses, and I didn't really look at a reference, so I'm just kind of winging it there. But again, using a dry brush technique to get that sort of cobblestone texture onto the raised platform, like the raised foundation of Edoras itself, and how it is like a cobblestoney sort of settlement with the mead hall and Theoden's hall at the top. And coming in with some acrylic paint, gold acrylic paint, to do the highlights, because of course it is a golden hall, so we did have to use gold, Well, we didn't have to, but I definitely wanted to. This is using the Art Studio Mini Detail Brush in the size 3. It's like tiny. But I've used it in the past to do gold highlights, and it's sort of my go-to gold highlight brush. And it's probably the only acrylic brush that I use that isn't very crispy when it's dry, and that's because I take a lot of care. It's like the only brush that I take care when using acrylics to like really rinse out as much as possible, because I do use it for watercolors every now and then as well. So there we've got the golden highlights on the Golden Hall of Meduseld for number 13, which is Roof. And now we are on to the final day for this week. I'm still going, unfortunately, sometimes. But this is Tick, and I initially actually didn't know how to do this prompt. So I do what I always recommend you should do, which is go back to the dictionary and see other meanings than the one that we typically think we would use it for. So for tick is also, like, I was thinking of an insect initially, like the little spider tick, but tick is also a noise. It makes a tick 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 tapping sound, and I was like, of course, the old thrush, I believe, that is ticking against the door with a snail on during the day, and it makes, like, knocks the snail against the lonely mountain. And I really liked painting this one, actually, because I think it was a bit more of a stationary scene. Like, there wasn't any movement that I had to convey. It was just like as if it's got the snail in its mouth and it's just standing on some rocks. And using sort of that stippling motion, or to apply just like strokes to get the feather texture. And there we have it, day 14, which is week 2 of Inktober, going well, Tolkientober, as I like to call it. And yeah, thank you for watching. I will see you next week. Bye!